Well, due to some subscriber request, I'm going to be taking a look at the astrology chart of Meghan Markle once again. And in this case, we're going to be taking a look at the relationship with her father, Thomas Markle. In the previous reading we did about Meghan Markle, we were looking at the relationship with her mother, Doria Ragland. Now, the astrology chart can give us some clues about family relationships and the astrological karma that comes along with those relationships. In fact, in astrology, the idea is that it's not an accident, the family situation that you're born into, that there's a lot of karmic business that's basically reenacted within the current lifetime. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at, looking at astrology. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I do practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which is from ancient India, and with my own interpretation, of course. If you're interested in a personal private reading, please check down below for details. And also, I want to include that this astrology reading is for entertainment purposes only. All these statements about Meghan Markle or Thomas Markle, well, these are all my interpretations based on the astrological chart of Meghan Markle. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at a couple of factors we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be looking at the sun because the sun represents father in our charts. And then we're also going to be looking at the ninth house because the ninth house can represent father in our charts. And then we're even going to be looking at the sun in the Navamsa chart just for a quick minute on that one. So let's go ahead and take a look at the astrology chart. Now, we looked at the mother. Remember, the mother is represented by the moon and the fourth house. So the father's going to be sun and the ninth house. So we're going to want to look at sun over here. And then we're also going to want to look at the ninth house over here. And you'll notice there's no planets in the ninth house, but there is an important aspect. Few aspects there that we'll talk about in a moment. But let's focus on sun because sun is the karaka of father within our horoscope. It's the first thing we usually look at when we're looking at the relationship with our father. Now, if we look at the first house, you'll notice it's in the first house of Cancer, which is in astrology, the first house is your body, it's who you are, it's your identity. So, a large part of Meghan Markle's identity, whether she wants to acknowledge it or not, it does come from her father. So, a large part of her personality may come from her father. Maybe character traits. Okay, a lot of genetic traits even come from the father, with sun being in the first house. So that's something to talk about. Even a lot of the father's values. Now, from what I understand, she was mostly raised by her father, so that would make sense. That sun is the second lord, and it's in the first house. So it's like if you want to consider the second house representing values, it's like the values of the father. Okay. And like I said, this is whether she wants to, accept it or not. The thing about this placement is there's a malefic influencing it, which is Rahu over here. So we have Mercury and then we have uh, Rahu that are next to Sun. Remember, when planets are next to each other, they influence each other a lot. Now, the Rahu Sun combination, it can be quite troublesome. So we're going to really break that down here. Rahu and Sun. First of all, it can bring about a self-centered tendencies in the native that has it. So, for example, the native, Megan may be somewhat self-centered, maybe somewhat grandiose, especially with Rahu in the first house. It could be somebody seeking attention because Rahu with Sun represents seeking the spotlight. But let's talk about the father because this also is indicative of the father. Okay. So when Sun is with Rahu, a lot of times it can show a father that is self centered. They may display narcissistic tendencies. So some of this might be, rubbing off on Megan. I've seen when you have like self-centeredness or narcissistic tendencies, it does tend to run in families. So if a parent has those tendencies, it tends to get passed on to the children. Those tendencies. So definitely the father could have some of those traits. So even though we want to think that, a lot of my subscribers aren't huge Megan fans, but we want to think that she's abandoning her father. I can tell you what, based on the astrology chart, it's not necessarily a perfect relationship. There might have been a lot of self-centeredness even on the father's part. I know it looks easy. We could easily just pin that on Meghan Markle because she's the one that went off and got married to the royals, and Thomas Markle wasn't apparently involved in any of that. But you know, we have to go back in history. There's probably a story as to why that this has happened. There's probably been a lot of self-centeredness. Rahu with Sun can even indicate a father figure that either lies a lot, they're deceptive, they lie about kind of like their origin story. They may inflate different facts about themselves. So even, for example, Meghan might not be aware of all the facts about her father. Okay, so he might be twisting a lot of facts about his life, about what he did, and even kind of like making himself maybe better than he actually was. So these traits are definitely with Rahu and Sun being together. The other thing I want to talk about is Rahu and Sun can create something called Petri dosha. So let's talk about Petri dosha for a second. So Petri dosha, in Sanskrit, Petri represents patrons, or represents patriarchs, fathers, essentially like your ancestors. So when Rahu and Sun are together, it can create something called Petri dosha, which is essentially like not honoring the ancestors well. So the family line could be having this taint of this like lack of recognition from ancestors. Now, this karma may not all be Meghan's fault. It shows that the family line itself may have, kind of deviated from what the ancestors wanted. Okay, so the somewhere in the family history there could have been some deviation from connecting with the ancestral spirits. Now, because of this, when you have pre-tree dosha, it can kind of act like, it can act kind of like a generational curse in a lot of ways. It's like a lack of, it can, for example, be a lack of direction in one's life, a lack of guidance, a lack of like being clear about one's goals. And then it can even disrupt the relationships within the family just because the ancestors aren't being honored in the correct way. So the family lineage is being negatively affected with this Petri dosha that's occurring. Now, the other thing about this placement right here is we got Mercury there. Now, the father might actually be quite intelligent, might be quite verbose, might have a lot of opinions. At one point in their relationship, they may have actually been, talked a lot. Maybe they had a lot of communication with Sun and Mercury being there in the first house. But Mercury, it rules the third house of Virgo and the 12th house of Gemini. So what's interesting is it can show the father, and I think, wasn't the father living abroad, not in the US? And I think he's even talking about now, I think he was in Mexico, and now he's even moving to Southeast Asia. You can comment down below. But that's interesting that 12th lord is with the sun. It could show somebody who's has a lot of international connections, and it could show somebody that's a little bit of a hermit and an isolationist. So I know this is going to sound, it's going to sound maybe that I'm lending some credence to Meghan's story about her father, but he could also be somewhat aloof. So it could have been that she may have reached out a few times, and maybe there's a lot of aloofness because the 12th house can represent that. Somebody that's aloof, somebody that's a little bit of a hermit, somebody that they like their solitude. Maybe they don't, maybe he's saying he wants all this connection with the family, but it's not necessarily true. Remember, Sun with Rahu can be, they're not really telling the facts. Okay. So maybe, there's a little bit of attention he's getting from the media by acting like he's having this, that he's being screwed over, so to speak, but maybe he's kind of over exaggerating his point of view about it with Rahu and Sun being together. Now let's talk about the ninth house. Okay, let's talk about the ninth house. Now there's, by the way, before we go to the ninth house, I did want to bring up, you'll notice that there's a lot of planets within those houses that Mercury rules. And just for the brevity of the reading, we're not going to go into, but you can see it's very complicated. Like you can see Saturn being involved in the third house, like a very pessimistic father. That's one point to bring up. But we already have a lot of data just with Rahu and Sun being together, Mercury being there, and then third and 12th house. And then we're going to get the Saturn aspect with the ninth house here. So remember, ninth house is the other factor we look at as far as a relationship with one's father. And if you just look at the ninth house alone, there's no planets in it. So you would think, right off the bat, like, okay, well, I guess it's not a big deal. But we got that Saturn aspect here. But these other planets are also aspecting it. So we got Jupiter, we got Moon. Okay. So the father is it's kind of a complicated figure. It's not really so cut and dry. I mean, the Saturn placement always is going to bring some difficulty. Okay. Whenever you see Saturn aspecting one of like either moon or sun or the ninth house or the fourth house, it's always going to bring up some sort of karmic debt with one of your parents. So definitely there's a lot of issues with the father, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of distance. Saturn can create the distance that there's these long periods of not talking to each other whatsoever. So Saturn can be long separations. You're not talking to each other whatsoever. And it always just is that way. That's the thing about the Saturn karma is sometimes it's not resolvable. I think he's 80 years old right now. So it could be that this is just not going to be resolved. And it's sad, but a lot of times that's what it shows. Saturn is also the eighth lord. So I want to bring that up for a moment. Again, father could have a lot of secrets. Remember, that kind of goes with this Sun and Rahu. Father has a lot of secrets, a lot of things that he has not said about different things about his life. He may have secret relationships, a secret identity, even, a secret identity that she doesn't know about. Okay, that's one thing to point out. Got the moon here. So the father does have some nurturing qualities. He's not entirely bad. I mean, she probably does have some good memories. Moon represents nostalgia. So moon being on the ninth house, there's some good memories in there. It's not all entirely bad. Then we got Jupiter teaching a lot of values. So there was a lot of teachings, and Jupiter rules the ninth house. Okay. So father was a teacher. Maybe father wasn't around as much though. So even though he raised her, it could be that he was busy working or busy with other obligations, or with the eighth lord carrying out secret relationships could be something else. So there's definitely some issues there. Now, when we look at relationship with parents, we usually just want to see, is it being influenced by malefic? And we'll see both houses are. I mean, both indications are. So Sun is being influenced by Rahu. Remember, Rahu's considered a malefic. And then the ninth house is being influenced by Saturn there. So it shows both houses are being afflicted. The other thing I want to point out is, and this is a quick point about the Navamsa chart. If we look at where Sun is in the Navamsa chart, which is over here, and I hope you all can see it, the Sun is in the sixth house of the Navamsa chart. The Navamsa chart is a supplemental chart that's used in Vedic astrology. The sixth house has to do with conflict, lies, disagreements. So with Sun being in the sixth house, it could show a conflicted relationship. So even if Meghan wouldn't have been, gotten involved with the royal family whatsoever, the astrology chart pretty much shows that the relationship with father was going to be kind of like what it is. So even though I know a lot of people want to say, oh, it's because, she went and she married Prince Harry, and, she dissed him, she didn't show up, or, she didn't invite him to the wedding. I don't remember if he was invited or not. You can comment down below. But the astrology chart can show something that was kind of destined to happen. So even if she would have, married, just some regular person, some regular guy, it still would have been the same thing. There would have still been this, this father that may have self-centered tendencies, this father that may have a lot of secrets about themselves, the conflictiveness with Sun in the sixth house of the Navamsa chart. So they're kind of, that would have been a feature of her life script with her father anyway. So I just want to put that out there. Let me know what you all think. That was just a few quick points to bring up with the relationship with the father. So comment down below. Also, let me know if you want to see some more chart readings similar to this one, where we're looking at maybe family relationships with other royals or anyone you would like. So comment down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.